Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us. My name is Tricia Swanson, and I am Vice President of Government Relations for the Montgomery County Chamber of Commerce. I'm going to have Anrio, who's not on video. He's leaving me all alone on video, but I'm going to have Anrio, our new chair, unmute himself and give some welcoming remarks. And we have the Comptroller on the line, so then we'll turn it over to him to give his overview and then open it up for some questions. Anrio, are you there? There you are.
Yes. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for attending the webinar. I particularly want to thank the Chamber for hosting this and Tricia for navigating and being brave enough to be on video to monitor and kind of navigate this for us. So I'm happy. I am the incoming chair for Committee for Montgomery. Our past chair, David Rodick, he should be on, but he just completed his term, and we want to thank him for his service. And as incoming, I want to welcome everybody again. And Trish, I will pass it off to you to begin the webinar. We have an exciting panel for you this morning, and hope you all get good information from it. So thank you, Tricia.
Okay, and before I turn it over to the Comptroller, just a couple of housekeeping things. Please feel free to ask questions throughout. And then what I will do is if you ask a question, I will unmute you at the appropriate time and let you introduce yourself, what organization you're calling from, and ask the Comptroller yourself. And that way he can hear from more than just me. Mr. Comptroller, we have an incredible diverse group of participants on here. It looks like we're just over 50. We have businesses, we have education leaders, we have union leaders, and it looks like it's a great diverse group. So with that, I will turn it over to you. Are you there?
Yes, can you hear me okay, Tricia?
Yes, we can.
Excellent. Well, I'm delighted to be with you virtually. Thank you, Tricia, for making sure that this all works out, and congratulations, Anrio, on your ascension to chairman. I salute you and the other committee members. Dave Rodich and I go way back, and I particularly want to recognize the importance of the committee for Montgomery, because we are such a fabulous county. I've lived in it for 40 years down here in Tacoma Park, the People's Republic of Tacoma Park. But Montgomery County is a powerhouse, and I'm always impressed with the advocacy of the Committee for Montgomery. I'm going to give everyone my cell phone right now, so if you have a pencil, you can jot it down. The number's 301-332-1961. 301-332-1961. Why do I do that? I don't actually get a lot of calls on it, but I like the fact that you all have a cell phone number of a statewide official that you can call, leave a message or text me. I may not pick up the number if I don't recognize your number, but anything that business owners and Marylanders who are involved in economic activity have to tell me about the real Maryland economy. It always supplements the spreadsheet and the data that we're looking at. And I just think it gives us an invaluable insight as we try to figure out what we're going to be doing to recover from this economic and health crisis that we're hopefully emerging from. And I happen to have a huge focus on small businesses because, frankly, the pandemic has turned them upside down. As you know, nationally, 41% of African American business owners have dropped out in the last few months. That's an astonishing figure. 32% of Latin-owned businesses disappeared. 25% of women-owned businesses. We've had 700,000 Marylanders apply for first-time unemployment. Obviously, this is a situation where, on top of the pandemic and on top of the economic consequences, we now have this unbelievably justified social justice campaign against police brutality all over the country. So We're in the middle of some very stormy weather. I don't want to sugarcoat things by saying that it's all going to end well. I'm got my fingers crossed that we come up with a medical solution, a vaccine or a therapy that allows people to get back to some economic activity. But I'm going to look and advocate very strongly for systemic solutions to the systemic economic inequality, that those figures I just mentioned to you about small businesses, particularly minority and women-owned businesses, the difficulties that they're facing. We have about 170,000 small and not so small businesses in Maryland. About 40,000 of them are sole proprietorships. Every single one of them is important to us because they represent their own little ecosystem of customers and distributors and vendors and suppliers and creditors. We've already lost 20 to 30,000 of them. They're not going to reopen, period. Our experts estimate that half of the 700,000 unemployment filings, those jobs will never come back. So there's a need, I think, for all of us in government to commit ourselves to identifying solutions that are going to help bring back and reconstruct and allow to succeed and thrive, particularly small businesses. We have a lot of rhetoric among Maryland politicians about how small businesses are the backbone, the heart and soul of the state's economy. That rhetoric is terrific. I give it a lot myself as a politician. The actions are not backing up the rhetoric. And that's why I'm particularly interested in what you folks see as the fiscal outlook for your small businesses in Montgomery. We are going to, in the next 6 weeks, on the Board of Public Works, make some significant surgery, I think, in the fiscal year that starts July 1st. The revenue projections that we have are, let me just, once again, not sugarcoat things, they're a nightmare. And the optimistic scenario we use Moody's Analytics to come up with our revenue projections. The optimistic scenario is $2 billion less revenue in fiscal year 2021, nearly $2.6 billion in fiscal year 2022. That's assuming that we get another federal stimulus plan to patch the budget at the state and county and municipal level out of Congress, that we also have a vaccine by the end of the year, and most importantly, that we do not have a resurgence of the virus, which results in economic restrictions. So that's the optimistic scenario. The worst case scenario is a $2.6 billion loss in 2021 and $4 billion in fiscal year 2022. So both the optimistic and the pessimistic scenarios that we think are relatively good parameters are dependent upon things happening that we pray are going to be there. But, I'm the last person to get medical advice from, but I've got my fingers crossed that we will have a vaccine sooner rather than later. In Maryland, I think we have to be, in addition to looking for social justice, which is so laudable and so impressive all around the country, we need to look for economic justice. And we can't just let these Main Street businesses disappear in front of our eyes without a huge effort to do what we can to rescue the ones that are still rescuable. What do I mean by rescue? I mean, take $300 million right now from the rainy day fund, cut it into $10,000 checks, and walk up and down the main streets of Montgomery County and the rest of the state, writing $10,000 checks to small businesses that, but for that check, are going to call it a day and close up. I mean, it has to happen now rather than a month from now. And, it's it's hard to get over the fact that we're doing things at the national level and the state level that are largely benefiting the big businesses that have reserves and can somehow muddle through. We're not getting the kind of assistance to small businesses that we need to. So if you guys want to work with me on that, we're going to have a lot of big issues at the Board of Public Works. To the extent the committee has got some data on small businesses in Maryland, in Montgomery County, and particularly African-American owned, Latino, and women-owned small businesses, I would be grateful. Once we get through this, a year or so from now, when we have a medical solution, I think we need to reinvent the state of Maryland. We frankly are looked on by the country as a high tax, high regulatory state. We need to change that. We need to put more money in the pockets of Marylanders, not take more money out. We have to make sure Maryland small businesses are positioned to compete and succeed. And we need to make, most importantly at the end, make Maryland a more attractive place to live, invest, and retire. And you can substitute Montgomery County for all of the mentions of Maryland that I said in those three things. But that, to me, is the silver lining of all this. I think the Committee for Montgomery can play a huge role in reimagining and recreating, really, the image of the state of Maryland and also Montgomery County. Obviously, part of that is supporting strongly our local small businesses on Main Street. But it also means, you know, I don't mean to say this about the local jurisdictions, but there are a lot of impediments to small businesses who want to open up on the main streets of Maryland town. And it's not what Amazon sees when Amazon moves in, or Walmart, or some of these big companies, and they want to do business in Maryland. We fall all over ourselves to clear the way for that. I mean, I think Walmart could build a 50,000 square foot building almost anywhere in the state, and the local communities will clear away all the impediments, the regulatory and permitting ones. At the local level, permitting is a nightmare for small businesses. And I'm not talking about big businesses. I'm talking about really small businesses who just want to rent and open up a shop on Main Street. So it's a combination of let's get some more get some state relief immediately into the pockets of these small businesses. And then long-term, let's reinvent the state of Maryland as a state that's friendly to small businesses and new families who may want to move to Maryland. I will conclude by saying, had the pandemic never occurred, I would have been talking about some of the same issues, because the demographics of Maryland's taxpayers are changing and we're getting much older. We need to get young people to stay in Maryland and do their businesses, and create economic activity. And we need to recruit young people from around the country to come to our state and live and work and raise a family and have a business and hopefully retire here. So silver lining is reimagining our state and the relationship between the private sector and the public sector. In the next year, we're going to be facing some stormy weather. Let me stop and take any questions that you have, Tricia or Mario or David or anybody who's on the line.
Yeah, we had a couple of quick follow-up questions. The $300 million in the rainy day fund that you referenced, I know you've been advocating on that message really since the pandemic first hit. What's the advocacy action there? Is it reaching out to the governor? Is it reaching out to our local or our state electeds?
It's just getting things put into a rational framework. Right now, the impulse is to take money from the rainy day fund, which started out at I think 1.2 billion, And most of the folks that I know in politics see the rainy day fund mistakenly as something to patch the state budget with, or something we can maybe patch the county budget with. Those are important budgets. They do need attention, but they are much less important than the budgets of small businesses that are deciding to close their doors. So my original ask was 500 million from the rainy day fund. The governor took 175 million and dedicated that to small business relief. It has not proven to be very successful. It was oversubscribed very quickly. It's somewhat confusing as to whether it's low interest loans or grants. About 50 million ultimately got given in grants, which is what I'm advocating. That was oversubscribed within 48 hours. And frankly, I'm asking for the remaining 300 million to be allocated. And I'm going to be pretty firm in that as far as what I need to see from state relief for small businesses. So the status is that it's somewhat in the open. I'm not sure who you communicate with, but I think folks for the committee for Montgomery should obviously rally their Montgomery County delegates and senators, and also county council folks. And the message should be, yes, God bless the state and county budgets. They're important. We understand they provide services, but there's a lot of liquidity in these public budgets, and those public budgets are huge. Small businesses don't have that kind of flexibility. They need help right now. And if we don't save more of these small businesses, we're going to continue to have these somewhat nightmarish revenue situations. So, long-winded way of saying, anybody you know, contact and say, red alert, right in front of our eyes, minority business owners, women business owners are dropping out as we speak. We need to staunch the bleeding, stop the bleeding of these wonderful small businesses and move right in and start writing, based on your vetting. You guys are the experts, you and the chamber in Montgomery County. You can identify 1,000 small businesses tomorrow in the county that are in danger of closing. And somebody should get the big checkbook out and frankly walk into those stores and write them a check of state relief so that they, God bless us, please stay in business. I think it will have an enormous positive impact, and it will be money well spent. But I'm the comptroller. I'm not the governor, and I'm not the Senate president, and I'm not the Speaker of the House. Thank you for asking that.
Yeah, so I'm actually going to unmute one of our CFM members. Ray, are you there? You're unmuted. You asked a great question referencing the comptroller seat on the Board of Public Works. Did you want to ask your question?
Sure. Comptroller Franchot, thanks for being here with us today. You described a deficit for FY 21 and 22 of, let's say, $2 billion plus. What are the plans to deal with the deficit? How's that going to impact us in the county and the state? And what cuts do you see the board coalescing around?
Well, I'm going to defer to the governor and the legislative leaders. They're obviously huddling and trying to figure out what the best way to deal with these revenue shortfalls is going to be. And I think most of the cuts will be made at the Board of Public Works level, because we're able to do in real time what is necessary. I did this when I was first elected comptroller. 2008, 2009, we had the Great Recession. It was a financial crisis, not a pandemic, but It was very severe, and we cut at one point $1 billion at one Board of Public Works meeting, $1 billion in real time out of the state budget. There is a lot of, not a lot of, but there is a significant amount of liquidity in the state budget. And if the feds do end up providing some monies, I think the governors have asked for $500 billion. That would be very helpful. But as far as what the specific cuts are, I'm keeping my powder dry and waiting for the governor and the legislative leaders to come forward. However, I will not vote for major surgery on the budget unless there is major immediate relief for small businesses from the rainy day fund. That's what this fund was created for. It was not created as a, oh, let's keep everybody 100% whole as far as the public budgets. And so most of your attention from the committee, if I were, able to just give my free advice, which is, my wife sometimes calls me often wrong, but never in doubt. I'm not wrong here, and I'm not in doubt at all. Small businesses in Montgomery County need relief right now, and you guys can help a lot because you have credibility with, the private sector and the public sector. So I'm not suggesting the public sector is a second priority or is not an important priority, but right now it's a second priority to what's going on in the small business community.
I'm going to unmute Dave Rodich, who asked a question, kind of ties into the next topic we're going to be discussing. But Dave, did you want to ask your question? Are you there? Okay, well then I will steal his question and ask it. How do we reimagine the new economy that's going to emerge? What kind of jobs do you see emerging, and how can we help prepare working people for the new economy?
Well, that's a great question. I'm going to rely upon my basic belief that the genius of the private sector is alive and well. It's going to be nimble. We're going to have a completely different way of dealing with public issues like healthcare and transportation and education. Let's take education, for example. It's not going to be the same. We're not going to have big cafeteria lunches with our kids all in one big enclosed room. We're not going to have auditorium meetings where the kids are all sitting next to each other. We're not going to have crowded classrooms. We're not going to have crowded school buses. I'm not exactly sure how that's going to be. That's your next speaker, who I believe is coming on, Jack Smith, who I have great confidence in, but it's all going to be different. Same thing with transportation, same thing with healthcare. The key here is for Maryland to realize that there's an opportunity to change the perception, which is somewhat unfair, that we are not a business-friendly state and that we, all priorities are always supporting the public budgets rather than the private sector economy. We can change that for the better. I'm going to leave it up to the private sector to generate the jobs and the wages and the new workforce training that is so important. I mean, they're going to figure that out. They already are figuring it out. But it's going to be completely different. I'm often asked about the Kerwin education plan. That has got to go back to the architects, and they have to rework the entire plan. A, there's no money. B, it's all changed. It's out of date. The Kerwin report doesn't apply anymore to what the new education environment's going to be. I'm not sure what that is, but it's going to be significantly different. So I didn't mean to get into Kerwin. I know that's controversial territory, but and I'm not blaming the architects at Kerwin at all. They, the pandemic is, something that would have been very difficult to anticipate. So the issue here is get ready. We're going to have a very rocky 12 months economically. There's going to be a lot of pain and controversy over some of the reductions in public spending, but ultimately we're going to emerge, I think, into a new environment of prosperity. We have really strong economic bones in the state, but get ready for changes, many of which will improve the quality of our lives in the state. Let me stop there. Good question. And Dave Rodich probably is, left this and is doing something useful like having seconds. But give him my best when you talk to him, because he's a great guy.
Absolutely. I am going to combine some of these questions in the interest of time. There's been questions about another round of grant funding for small businesses. And then there's been some questions around expanding the pool of businesses that can apply, mostly the sole proprietors and independent contractors. Can you speak a little bit, if you're having conversations around another round of funding and potentially opening up the pool of businesses that can apply?
Well, I mentioned that someone should take the big checkbook of the state, take $300 million, go to every county, starting with Montgomery County, work with you and the chamber or whoever knows local businesses, and literally walk into the business and write a $10,000 grant from the state of Maryland with our fervent wishes that you stay open. And that once we get through the medical situation, that you are still with us. We've already lost 20, 30,000 businesses. They're gone already. We need to make sure the next 20 to 30,000 small businesses that are hanging by a thread in the state, that we do something for them. And it can't be, gee, here's our application, make out a grant application. It doesn't work. I used to complain about the federal government and their stimulus monies and the difficulty of figuring out how to apply to the alphabet soup of federal programs for assistance. Forget the federal government, the state government, has just been mired in one controversy after another as far as getting what little money was allocated into the pockets of small businesses. And so this is way beyond, let's get a new program and see if some people can apply for it. This is a red alert all over the state, but Montgomery County certainly is the breadbasket of the state of Maryland. Needs to go to the front of the line and start demanding that there be an immediate relief program. I don't mean to, I have a very positive relationship with Governor Hogan, and I like him a lot, and I support the general direction that he's had, which is emphasizing public health and saving lives. I completely support him on that, and I think he's been aggressive and consistent in that. But the getting money into people's pockets where it can immediately help and stop this march towards extinction, I guess, of small businesses around the state, that has not worked well. And I'm suggesting that we need a new, much more energetic, dramatic approach with a much larger pot of money. So let me stop there. I'm kind of rambling around. I don't mean to be doom and gloom. I'm not doom and gloom. I'm very optimistic as far as what's going to happen down the road. but I am frustrated with the gap between rhetorically supporting small businesses and what actions could actually make that rhetoric real. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much. And I want to be mindful of time. We did have a few other lingering questions. And if it's okay with you, I would ask that we can send those to your fantastic staff to maybe get. Wonderful.
Absolutely. I've got Nadia Williams listening in on this. She's a direct contact for you guys. But as I said, I gave my cell phone number out. I'm not going to pick it up if you call me if I don't recognize the number, but I will get the text. I will get the voicemail. I'm happy to be in touch. If there's something specific to the comptroller's office, you know, we have done 100 things to make life easy. We've given a 90-day forbearance on tax payments. We may extend that. We have tried to the greatest extent possible, continue the kind of customer service that we're that people are accustomed to. We are not the IRS. We are not going to, come July 15th, be raising our compliance enforcement levels and going after people. We are going to work with Marylanders. If you need some relief after July 15th, call our office, communicate with us. We're going to be very flexible as far as payment plans, et cetera. Why do I like those programs? I like those programs a lot more than the relief programs because nobody has to apply for them. I'm just literally keeping billions of dollars, in effect, a no interest loan in business pockets and individual pockets around the state. And I like that. Ultimately, the taxes have to be paid, of course, but I like that because you don't have to fill out an application and spend weeks trying to get hold of someone on an 800 number. Other than that, everything's great. I don't mean to sound a little dark as far as the future. It isn't. I think there's tremendous positivity out there, but we have to match the social justice, which is so important, with economic justice. That's what we need in our state right now. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and thank you for all of the advocacy that you've done throughout your entire tenure for small businesses across the state. And so with that, I'm going to turn it over to our next section with Dr. Jack Smith, who is on, if he wants to unmute himself. Are you there, Dr. Smith?
I am. Good morning. How are you this morning?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing well, thank you.
So just so you know, we have over 60 attendees from across just various sectors. We have businesses on here, we have education, we have unions, we have the nonprofit community, healthcare, financial institutions. And so it's a good diverse group. And I know that whether you're in education or you're a working parent, kind of seeing the shift that Montgomery County Public Schools has had to make both in the spring, but then also looking forward to the future, we thought it was a great opportunity for you to talk to the broader Montgomery County community about the conversations that MCPS is having and any way that the Committee for Montgomery can support those efforts and advocacy moving forward.
Certainly. I'm going to talk specifically about education, obviously, and what happens in education, as the Comptroller just said about the economy. What happens in education affects the economy, and it affects the quality of life. It affects our future in every sense of the word. And those are often thought of as cliches when we say our children are our future, but that is actually the truth. The reason it's a cliche is because it's said over and over, and the reason it's said over and over is because it's accurate. And certainly from March 12th at 4 o'clock in the evening, when the governor and the state superintendent, Dr. Salmon, made the announcement that schools would be closed for a 2-week emergency closure, until where we sit today, the world has shifted profoundly for education. We started that day, and the way we could think about it at that time, from the state superintendent to all the school systems in Maryland, was like a major snowstorm, like Snowmageddon in 2010, which shut down all the schools for 2 weeks. And she referenced that day, you should plan to make up these days during spring vacation, if possible. But we now see the kind of depth and breadth of the effect of this on public education, on our community, and on our economy in ways that we could not see then, no one could see. In terms of the impacts on education, I'm going to break it down into several parts. First of all, I think the most important part goes to the core of our reason for existence, and that is student learning and student well-being. Those are the two things that we are responsible for. The 24,000 employees of Montgomery County Public Schools are responsible for the well-being of the students as they come into our schools. Not their entire well-being, but the part that is related to school and the ways that we can help in any area of their life, their physical, social, and psychological well-being, and we're responsible for their learning with their families as partners and how they progress. And obviously, literacy and mathematics are the foundation for most all other learning in life. If you can read and write well, and if you can practice good computation skills and good mathematical reasoning skills and apply those to everyday real world problems, then that helps you in your life, in your community, and in your career, all areas. So the effect of this on children and their learning, adolescence, and their learning and school experience cannot be fully realized at this point. But for the last 3 months of school, certainly Montgomery County was able to stand up a continuity of learning opportunity, but there was tremendous variation in that. Variation based on the grade level of the student, on the different services that the students require, like enrichment centers, special education services, ESOL programs, all areas. It affected everything, and it created tremendous variation for children across the system. We are working now and have on our website and have been sending out to families weekly tremendous numbers of summer opportunities that we can intend to try and continue throughout next year to help support students in rebuilding a more vibrant and dynamic learning system, and providing many additional opportunities for the summer, after school, and Saturdays next year to help students in areas where they may have suffered learning loss or the loss of some vital knowledge or understanding or skill or well-being this spring. And it did affect everyone. It affected every single student and family, and it affected every member of our community. So we're building that out and working with our staff members across the system to determine how to do that. Obviously, you all know that Montgomery County is a little bit behind the rest of the state in reopening, and that affects the school systems too. So when Karen Salmon says, you may well be able to bring small groups of students back into school buildings this summer, we probably won't be able to do that until later in July or even the beginning of August, in the same way that some of our other counties in the state might be able to do it in the first 2 weeks of July or something like that. So we'll continue to work with our county health department and MSDE to do that, but we do need to do that. And the school board has adopted a budget that is very focused on that opportunity for students to have those in school and out of school, regular out of school time experiences in enrichment, in boosting their mathematics and literacy skills, and providing them outlets for their well-being. The next part of that whole thing is the digital tools and the connectivity. Huge part of the challenge this spring was that has tremendous variation. Some families have more than one digital device per person in that home, and other families might have one device for 3 or 4 or 5 members in a family, and other families might not have any at all. And this summer, it's our intention to build out our connectivity and our digital device system so that every single student in Montgomery County Public Schools, K-12 or 112, whatever is appropriate depending on our youngest learners' needs, will have that device. So we will not have two children trying to share one Chromebook, or a parent and a child and a grandparent all trying to work from home. We don't know what the fall will look like, but it's likely to look like some hybrid version of what we've been doing, which means students will be in school some of the time, remote sometimes. Youngest learners probably have more time in school, school buildings, and yet we know many parents are saying we want remote learning because we can't send our child back because of an underlying health condition the child has, or an underlying health condition that the family member has, and the child is kept closer to home all the time because of that risk. So we're planning and working for all of those things right now, but connectivity and digital devices will be a huge part of it. And then the third part of the budget the board adopted was really around adult learning. 24,000 employees, all who are going to have tremendous opportunities this summer and into the fall around sanitizing buildings, around socially distancing with children, whether they're 6 or 16, around how to transport them, feed them, bring them into the school in the morning, send them home in the afternoon, and all of those interactions in between, as well as more robust and interactive remote learning for the children who are doing that kind of learning, as well as how to use the equipment that we have both in the classroom and in the remote situation to the greatest degree possible, so that tremendous amounts of adult learning are going to be needed. We have done some of that this spring. We'll do a lot more in the next 6 weeks before school starts, and then we'll continue that throughout the year next year as things evolve and as we go. We also have to be prepared at any moment if there's an outbreak in a community or in related to a school, to be able to switch that school over to remote learning immediately. So that's kind of our budget. The county council was very, very clear with us throughout the process, and as early as the third week of March said, we're doing the same services budget. You will get maintenance of effort from us. We talked to them multiple times about that, and they stood firm. They did, however, offer the caveat that they will be willing to work with us as things evolve in September, October, November, and we have a clearer picture of our budget circumstance as a county, as a state, as a nation, and what it's going to cost to continue to create and build out the systems that I've just been describing across the county. Frankly, I was relieved when none of the counties in the state applied for a waiver of maintenance of effort, because that is always a possibility. And as you all know, I'm sure the maintenance of effort law requires a floor of funding per student that is required, but that can be waived in certain situations. So far, Montgomery County has not asked to reduce that, and they did pass the budget both at the county council and the board, school board level. The next area of real concern I have is around enrollment. Last year, we added almost 2,600 new students. Net gain this year came in all of last year and up through last summer. And on September 30th, when we submitted our official count, we added almost 2,600 new students. We expected to add over 2,700 new students by this fall. That number is really dwindled down to nothing in terms of the net increase. And right now we had up to almost 500 new students as of the end of January. And that net gain has disappeared. And K-12, that's where our funding sits, has diminished down to about 100 fewer K-12 students than we had on January 30th. And so that is of concern to us, because that affects every area of our budget and our operations. We did reduce our budget going into FY21 by 100 positions, and we're keeping a close eye on that. So far, we've not had to engage in any layoffs or any of those sorts of things, and we don't want to do that, because We want to keep the, so to speak, body and soul of the school system together around that, and continue to find ways and create new ways of providing all the services that children and need and that families depend on, and that build the strong outcomes that we've had. The third area I would say that we really have to pay attention to are the disparities that have existed for different student populations over many, many decades. Mr. Franchot talked about economic justice and social justice, and I want to say that the basis for that is educational justice. And I could show you many different sets of data and information evidence where many of our Hispanic, Latino, and African American students do very, very well in schools. Many of our students in poverty do very, very well in schools. Many of our special education program students who receive those services, or ESOL students, do very well. And there are disparities between those student populations and their white and Asian student populations who are not economically disadvantaged. Those disparities are real, they are known, they are pervasive in this nation, in this state, and in this school system. We have made some significant gains over the last 4 years that we have to continue to build on, and the COVID-19 is going to demand that we pay particularly close attention to how we provide services in our community, because as I said at the beginning of this, 100% of our future is dependent on this children in this community and other communities. They only make up about 20% of the population, but as Rick Riley, the former Secretary of Education, said, 100% of the future of this community is dependent on those children out there sitting in classrooms across the system. And we simply have got to continue to reduce those disparities, change them, and create access and real opportunity. That's what brings achievement. Other things are talked about and are good and are worthwhile when we talk about whether it's school boundaries, whether we talk about any other factor in the larger community. Those are all good things to work on. What brings a difference in achievement is what happens in the classroom every day with our children, in the school building every day with our children, and in the school system every day with our children, in their reading, their writing, their sense of confidence, their sense of belonging, their mathematical reasoning, their computation skills. Those are the things that change the world for a child. And if we don't do it in elementary school, we lose tremendous opportunity. And if we don't do it in middle school, then the chances of a student really being able to flourish and have real choices after high school are profoundly diminished. And we just simply cannot let that happen. So those are the big areas of work. The most important in my mind, making sure we recover learning for all children, and we pay tremendous attention to the disparities and continue to reduce them over the coming year, and recover that learning for children where it's been lost. Certainly watching our staffing and our enrollment will be important, because that's how we spend our money. 92% of the system's money is tied up in the cost of employees. And then finally is just continuing to work with the county government, taking them up on their very clear direction that we should come back to them in September, October, November, and have continued conversations with them about what it costs to do these things and how do we move forward together on behalf of the children of Montgomery County Public Schools. I'm going to stop there because it's 9:52, and I know that there was the opportunity for some questions. So Tricia, I will turn it back to you.
Yeah, I think one question I wanted to ask, and we had asked it of the Comptroller, and I think it merges the two of your presentations together well, is thinking about the future of our economy and what we need to do to prepare working people for kind of the new economy that will shape out of this global pandemic moving forward. Has the school, I know the school system is talking about kind of the logistical piece of how to get everybody back to school, but long-term looking at what does this new economy look like, and how can the school system kind of support that K-12 education continuum into producing individuals that have that can fit into this new economy?
Absolutely. One of the things, when the announcement was made on March 12th, we were a face-to-face business. So a few students took health in the summer or a technology class in the summer. A few took online programs, fully online, but that really wasn't. And we need to be a face-to-face business. Our children need that for their well-being. But big shift here. We now know that there's no reason why we should ever have a snow day again, that we've had to shift. And we also know that the digital divide and the gap for kids in having access to those digital worlds outside of school is so significant. We knew it before, now we've been confronted face to face with it, and that goes to their career. And so we're going to have to do profoundly more with the digital world, whether students are in the classroom, at home, in the neighborhood. That's got to be an integral part of what they're doing and what we're doing to prepare them for the world of work and the economic world of the future, the digital part. We also have to know we have to be more flexible. We've found that out with our own employees, that while we need all of the employees we have, their actual roles may be very different, and building those digital skills for every employee will be an important part of those shifting roles that many of our employees are in right now, that as it's changed. So I think the digital world and the flexibility combined, if we can do those things well, then we can change the experience not only of children as they move out, but also of our current employees, not just in the school system, but across the county.
Wonderful. I'm going to unmute Enrio if he can unmute. He had a question. As our chair now, and as chair of the issues committee last session, an issue that we as the committee for Montgomery and the chamber actually lobbied on was the Kirwan Commission. And no one would have anticipated kind of the cut in our economy that was going to be going towards funding the Kirwan Commission. Henri, did you want to ask your question, or did you? Let's see, he's self-muted. Okay, well, I will go ahead and ask it. Have you been in conversations about how the Kirwan recommendations are going to be impacted by this economic outlook?
Well, certainly my hope is that they will be slowed down, not stopped or eliminated, because the things in the Kirwan recommendation are incredibly important for our community and our students. Things like moving toward pre-K for all students. Things like moving toward very strong literacy and mathematics support for every student at the elementary school, so those disparities do not exist by the time the middle school experience starts for the child. Things like working around community schools to provide the wraparound services around physical, social, and psychological well-being. The making sure that we have a highly effective and very well qualified educator in every classroom, in every school building, as the principal and administrators in those schools, as well as our support professionals, and using our support professionals who work in the classrooms and with children in much more integral ways. Those things, I think, had tremendous promise in the Kirwan work, the career technology, 21st century job opportunities, the dual enrollment at Montgomery College. I mean, we've drastically increased our dual enrollment since in the last 4 years since I've been in the system, and we need to keep doing that. We're having literally by next spring, assuming that COVID doesn't disrupt it, but I don't think it should, we should literally have hundreds of students graduating with an Associate of Arts and a high school diploma simultaneously. That's part of what was in Kirwan. All of those sorts of thinkings have to go forward. So I hope it's delayed. I think we have to push very hard that it not be stopped or eliminated.
So one other question, I know that you and I have talked about this throughout the pandemic, but In addition to making sure that teachers, if we have to shift back to a virtual learning capacity, that teachers have the tools that they need. One sector that's been kind of navigating this as well is the parental workforce. And if you're lucky enough to have two parents that, or a parent that has a job that's supporting their child, how do you balance the doing what you need to do between 9 to 5, but also supporting your child in accessing virtual learning? So can you talk a little bit about how you've communicated with parents and supported parents and what that might mean moving forward?
Absolutely. This has been tremendously challenging for the adults in families. You know, I have written a little bit about my own 6 grandchildren, not because I think their plight is different from any of the children, but because we understand this personally, Gail, my wife, and I, as we talk to our adult children, and how do you manage working, even if you have a job that allows you to telework, how do you manage what your first grader and second grade and fourth grader are doing right now? And so as we move into the summer and with the hope of bringing back in groups of children into schools, part of our work has been to think about you know, the youngest learners needing to have more time in buildings. I think that's critically important. If we have to choose, youngest learners need more of the time in brick and mortar schools. We'd like them all back tomorrow, but that's probably not likely this summer, and it may not even be likely as we move forward into August 31st, the first day of school. So having youngest learners back, acknowledging that we are part of the care and well-being of children. I mean, for lots of years, public education, I started in 1980, so I've been doing this 40 years ago, resisted the idea that public education was childcare, and it's not. But we're part of the schema, the structure for childcare, and working closely with the county government and the state government as we try to open up the non-essential childcare programs. You know, there are a lot of mixed messages out there when the state says, well, you can open this up, but then they tell us you can't open schools yet. And then they say, well, you can open schools, but Montgomery County is some weeks behind everyone else. So I just want to say to the community, we're going to work as fast and as much as we can, and that we're allowed to create integrated structures. Now, one problem we'll have will be space, because depending on what happens with social distancing, that's going to be a very, very large challenge. And so we want to be really thoughtful about how we use space and what spaces are available in the community to do this. But those are all the ways we've been talking and thinking about that. And of course, having a digital device in every child's hand, so you're not trying to mediate, you know, if the fourth grader has the device and the seventh grader needs it. So that'll be another part of that, supporting of families and parents.
Well, and we are right at 10 a.m. So Dr. Smith, I did want to thank you for getting on and talking to our membership and the broader community. I know that it's an incredibly busy time for you, so we really appreciate it.
Well, I appreciate everyone in the community and all you've done to work together on behalf of our youngest residents as we've worked through this together. Thank you.
Thank you. And before I turn it over to our new chair, Anrio, I would be remiss if I didn't thank my boss, the CEO of the Montgomery County Chamber of Commerce, Gigi Godwin, who's been on the webinar and has supported the committee for Montgomery before I was appointed on the committee. And so she has been on and has been engaged. So I just wanted to acknowledge her. And with that, Anrio, I will turn it over to you to close us out.
Thank you, Tricia. So again, I want to thank Peter Franchot and Dr. Jack Smith for their words today. I think we learned a lot, just not only as a committee for Montgomery, but also as the guests who attended the webinar today. Tricia, I want to thank you for playing host to this and guiding us through the questions and through the guests. And I also want to thank the Chamber for their work and efforts on this as well. And I also want to thank Committee for Montgomery and our guests for attending. I hope you all got something out of this. And hopefully in the future, you will be hearing more from Committee for Montgomery on hosting these sort of webinar events to educate not only ourselves as an organization, but the county as a whole. So thank you again, everyone, and have a good day, and we will be in touch very soon.